After years of waiting, superhero fans will finally get to see a female-led Marvel movie with Captain Marvel premiering on March 8th. Taking place in the 1990s, which is why leading actress Brie Larson is wearing a totally rad 9 Inch Nails t-shirt in the trailer, this movie looks like it's going to be closer to an origin story than anything else. However, it seems like Captain Marvel's history won't be the only one on display in the film.
I'm just supposed to take your word for that.
Nick Fury, a long-standing supporting character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, will appear alongside Carol Danvers and also take center stage. Through incredible practical and special effects, actor Samuel L. Jackson appears a quarter-century younger in this film and portrays a less grizzled Nick Fury. Fans were also quick to notice that Fury is missing his trademark eye patch, and theorized that we will finally learn more about his mysterious eye injury in Captain Marvel. Now, there isn't anything to confirm that Fury loses his eye in the movie just yet, but it's a pretty safe bet that he'll become blind in his left eye before the end of the film. Considering how other Marvel movies explored the background of different characters and what we know about Nick Fury's past from various comics, we're almost guaranteed to learn how he suffered that graphic injury. Not to mention there are loads of interesting or cool ways he could end up donning his iconic eye patch. Here's why we're guaranteed to learn the truth behind Nick Fury's eye in Captain Marvel. Marvel movies have a tendency to introduce their protagonists as fully formed characters, and then elaborate on how they grew into themselves through flashbacks and bits of dialogue. While this means there usually isn't a ton of character growth in these movies, it does mean that characters are established pretty quickly and speed up the plot of the movie. This helps any given Marvel movie get to the action faster and gives the writers some wiggle room for explaining a character's motivations in future movies. Take Tony Stark, for instance. In the first Iron Man film, he's introduced as being one inciting incident away from becoming a billionaire superhero, and it's hinted that his unique outlook on life is partially due to his parents' untimely passing in a car accident. However, 6 years after the original Iron Man premiered, we learn that Bucky Barnes killed Stark's parents, and this revelation heavily impacts Stark's motivations and relationships from then on. Similarly, the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie hints at Peter Quill's mysterious parentage, but doesn't reveal that his dad is the cosmic god Ego until the sequel. A lot of other franchises would treat Star-Lord's pseudo-godhood as a major part of his character, but the Marvel Cinematic Universe puts his storyline on the back burner. Hundreds of films center on a character inheriting some epic destiny from their absent father, but Guardians of the Galaxy can downplay this revelation because Peter Quill is an extremely well-defined character outside of his relationship with his dad. Since most Marvel movies explore a main character's background well after their introduction, it would make sense for Captain Marvel to expand upon Nick Fury's past in a similar fashion. Nick Fury has been the badass, tough-as-nails leader of S.H.I.E.L.D. since his first appearance at the end of the original Iron Man movie. The only thing that's really changed with the character from film to film is what position he holds within or outside of S.H.I.E.L.D., but he's always working to defend the world from external and internal threats and inspires superheroes to do the same. However, we can tell from trailers that the younger Nick Fury that appears in Captain Marvel is quite a bit different from the Nick Fury we all know and love in the other MCU movies. It's hard to imagine the hardened Nick Fury that fought off an elite team of assassins in Captain America: The Winter Soldier would play with an adorable orange kitty cat like he did in the Captain Marvel trailer. This out-of-character behavior and the usual trend of Marvel movies exploring a character's background after their introduction means we are absolutely going to get a lot of screen time dedicated to Nick Fury becoming a badass in Captain Marvel. Losing his eye will likely be the event that cements Nick Fury's growth into a hardened and cynical defender of humanity, considering how the Marvel movies tend to tie injury to emotional and personal growth. Most obviously, Bucky Barnes' prosthetic arm acts as a constant reminder of the guilt he feels over harming his loved ones while brainwashed. Similarly, Tony Stark's left arm appears injured in nearly every one of his appearances and signifies how saving the world as Iron Man is placing a strain on the rest of his life. Based on these trends in Marvel films, it's all but certain that Nick Fury will grow into the version of himself that appears in previous films, and that the loss of his eye plays a major role in the process. Given the past formula for character development in the Marvel Universe, it would be hard to imagine that Nick Fury wouldn't lose his eye in Captain Marvel. Given this may be our only chance within this story arc to see a young Nick Fury, it would only make sense. Although Nick Fury's appearance and origins differ drastically between different comic book series, television shows, and the MCU films, the character always has a patch covering his left eye. How Nick Fury came to wear his iconic eye patch also differs drastically between each version of the character, though. The original version of the character that premiered back in the 1960s in his own series called Nick Fury and the Howling Commandos, he began to wear an eye patch due to an injury he sustained while fighting Nazis in issue 27. Similar to Samuel L. Jackson's version of the character, the original version of Nick Fury still has a left eye, but is heavily wounded. The original Nick Fury had shrapnel from a stray grenade graze his left eye, which gradually made his vision in that eye fade away. Additionally, he wears an eye patch so that his aim and depth perception are not thrown off by the limited vision in his wounded eye. The Ultimate Marvel Comics version of Nick Fury lost his eye while transporting a deadly mutant through Kuwait in the first Gulf War. The UMC Nick Fury was ambushed during the mission and would have died, but was saved when it turned out Wolverine was the mutant he was transporting. As Wolverine saved his life, the UMC Nick Fury feels like he owes our favorite mutant a kind of life debt and deeply treasures their friendship. The last major interpretation of the character is Nick Fury Jr., who premiered in a run of comics called Battle Scars in 2012, and would then get his own series simply titled Nick Fury in 2017. Nick Fury Jr. is the illegitimate son of the original Nick Fury, and frequently battles against Hydra cells attempting to overtake S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick Fury Jr. lost his eye to the villain Orion, as he wanted to obtain the Infinity Formula from the young man's blood. Of course, Jr. ends up defeating Orion, and goes on to become a formal S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. While each of these different versions of Fury lose their left eye in a unique way, the traumatic event greatly shapes each version of the character and teaches them something important. The original Nick Fury chose to let the vision in his left eye fade so that he could continue to fight in World War II and cements his dedication to his fellow troops and their cause. Ultimate Nick Fury's lost eye formed his bond with Wolverine and more generally imparted on him the importance of relationships. Nick Fury Jr.'s lost eye serves as a constant reminder of the cruelty and danger of the world of superhumans, and inspires him to be cautious at every turn. Following this trend, it's more than likely that Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury is going to lose his sight in his left eye in an equally impactful way. We know from Captain America: The Winter Soldier that Fury lost his eye after mistrusting someone, as he scolds the titular character with the line, "The last time I trusted someone, I lost an eye." This suggests that the incident that cost Fury his eye is also responsible for his harsh and meticulous nature. It would make a lot of sense if this betrayal happened in Captain Marvel, as the Skrull appear as major villains in the film. This evil alien race has the ability to shapeshift into pretty much anyone or anything with perfect accuracy. There seems to be some kind of body snatchers plot going on in the upcoming movie, and it'll all fall on Captain Marvel and Nick Fury to foil the Skrull's plan over the course of the film. It would perfectly align with every other element of Nick Fury's character if he suffered his partially blinding injury to an alien impersonating his ally. An event like that would totally explain his cynical and distrusting nature, and totally validate his cautious approach to nearly every situation. When your introduction to a world of aliens and superhumans involves villains who can perfectly impersonate even your most trusted allies, never taking anything at face value is an extremely reasonable habit to fall into. With how impactful the loss of their eye was on the other Nick Furies, it would make sense that the MCU's Nick Fury would lose his eye in a way that shaped the character in his previous appearances in the film franchise. It's all but guaranteed that Nick Fury suffers his eye injury in Captain Marvel, and that the incident greatly affects the character's relationships and outlook on life. It totally fits with how previous Marvel movies explore a character's origins and lines up with every other major version of the character. Now, the only question that remains is how exactly a Skrull or other alien creature injures Fury and forces him to don his iconic eye patch. Thankfully, the trailers for Captain Marvel give us a pretty good idea of how Fury will suffer this injury. It's clear that Nick Fury will play a supporting role to Carol Danvers for the majority of the film. There's even a scene where Nick asks Carol to prove that she isn't a Skrull, to which she responds by blowing up a jukebox with her unique energy powers. It might be a bit obvious, but it would make sense if Nick Fury lost his eye to a Skrull that was impersonating Captain Marvel. Having him lose his eye this way would justify Nick's extreme sense of caution and align with how he's had to deal with Hydra operatives pretending to be loyal S.H.I.E.L.D. agents in his other appearances. However, it's also entirely possible that the real Carol Danvers is the one to give Fury his well-known injury. While Captain Marvel is working to defeat the Skrull in the movie, her allegiances aren't super clear, and she may choose to side with the Kree Empire, since they are responsible for her powers. The trailers give us a sense of despair within Carol's soul. Without knowing who she is, was, or will be, she could be unpredictable, and possibly dangerous. Carol siding with aliens and betraying Nick would fit, seeing as the first order he gave the Avengers was to have them protect New York City from other alien invaders. A rockier relationship between the two might also explain why Captain Marvel is absent in every crossover Marvel movie, and why Fury hesitated to reach out to her for help until he and half of all living things were in the process of being obliterated. Carol directly betraying Nick would also explain why he's so cautious around even his allies, as she would have to prove to him that anyone is capable of betrayal. We would also see Nick Fury attacked by a Skrull impersonating another person close to him, like Agent Phil Coulson. The side character is set to appear in Captain Marvel, and we know that he and Nick are rather close. After all, Nick trusted Agent Coulson to recruit Tony Stark to S.H.I.E.L.D. during the first Iron Man movie. It would make sense that a Skrull would get close to Nick by pretending to be Agent Coulson. In fact, it might even help establish the relationship between the two if Coulson were the one to save Nick from the Skrull that wounded his eye. Sure, this would be a rather convoluted means to explain a less prominent relationship in the MCU, but the Marvel movies love digging into their own lore, and this would be a pretty deep cut. Of course, it is worth mentioning that plenty of people think that Nick Fury is going to lose his eye to Carol Danvers' pet at some point in the film. In the trailer for Captain Marvel, we see Nick Fury lovingly play with what appears to be an adorable orange cat. This creature is actually a kind of alien known as a Flurkin, and is extremely dangerous. Flurkins are incredibly smart creatures that merely resemble house cats, and produce dozens of deadly tentacles and retractable mouths on a whim. Basically, they're xenomorphs, but a lot cuter and fluffier. The Flurkin in the trailer is named Goose, a nod to the 1986 film Top Gun, and clearly isn't into Nick Fury doting over it. Wouldn't it be amazing if Nick Fury's inherent distrust in people stemmed from this feline wounding his eye because he was too familiar with it? There really is no better way for Nick Fury to learn not to accept things by their appearance than for him to suffer a serious injury from a furry little alien that just wanted its personal space. It would genuinely be amazing if Nick Fury became his no-nonsense, hardcore self because of an unexpected encounter with a cat that was actually a horrific alien monster. It's also worth mentioning that this could all be a major misdirect. After more than a decade of establishing Nick Fury and building up his mysterious origins, the last thing audience would expect is if he just loses his eye to a stray piece of shrapnel or some other mundane accident. Sure, he's built up his eye injury as the result of some kind of betrayal, but that could easily be him playing up his injury to inspire action in those around him. Considering how fixated the MCU is on its world building and making sure that every little bit of lore is justified, it would be an incredible twist if Nick Fury just lost his eye in a mere mundane accident. After 10 years of making audiences focus on and debate every little detail, this would be a great way of telling them just to relax every once in a while, not hyper-analyze every little piece of world building, and just enjoy the story of Captain Marvel. Regardless of how he loses his eye, it's a safe bet that Fury will suffer the injury that forces him to wear his well-known eye patch during the events of Captain Marvel. Fury gaining this wound in this film perfectly lines up with how Marvel movies add depth to characters and build a larger narrative between movies. It also fits with every other version of Nick Fury having a large part of their personality defined by the lesson they learn from the incident that damages their left eye. The truth behind Nick Fury's eye and how it influenced him as a person will be revealed in Captain Marvel, and you're just going to have to check out the film on March 8th to see exactly how Samuel L. Jackson's character becomes the post-credit stinger we all know and love. What's your best guess for how Nick Fury lost his left eye? Leave it in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe for more Behind the Screen.